Haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. This is the NPC special, an entire hour of NPC. Maybe not. It's one of those episodes where the All Blacks have suffered another first loss and we react to the sky falling in on us. So many emails, so much frustration in New Zealand after that loss to Argentina. We'll take a close look at the problems and the required changes for the two Springboks tests. The Boks came back against the Wallabies in the Cape Town mud, but neither side looked tremendous in that game either. The Rugby Championship is turning into a real fight this year. Of course, we'll talk Rugby World Cup. The Black Ferns had an easy win, but they were rusty against Spain, while England laid down the gauntlet for the rest of the competition against the USA. And also, we love it when the Ranfurly Shield gets on the move, and we love some Lima Sopoaga heroics. Great drama in the NPC on the weekend. We have another Rugby Ready giveaway for a month of free training with All Blacks guru Nick Gill's training team. We also have your emails and comments, as well as all the in-depth analysis you've come to expect from James Parsons and Bryn the Oracle Hall. Jipper.
He's no longer the Oracle.
He's no longer the Oracle.
It was short-lived, but well done, boys. You didn't see our loss coming, mate.
Oh, I did say that the South Africans would come back and win, so I think my oracleness is still.
No, mate, you picked the All Blacks over RG. You could have given us a heads up.
Oh, yeah, geez, I should have. Yeah, I couldn't. Could have whipped oracle skills for that All Black game. So yeah, it was definitely one that both you and I guess the three of us, were thinking that was going to happen.
Yeah, that was a difficult game to watch at the best of times. So let's get into our Ashley and Martin turning point for the Argentina All Blacks game. And really the turning point, Jip, was discipline. Yeah,
and I think it flowed on because of the ill discipline. It flowed on to the defensive problems just because there were less players on the field. And when you looked at the penalty count, it actually ended up in favour of the All Blacks, but the drastic nature of the penalties given away that led to the 3 yellow cards was just, you know, a big punishment. And I thought, to be honest, going into halftime break, I suppose the starch the All Blacks showed to, you know, hold them out with 13 men on the field, I almost felt, man, at that moment I was like, that could be the winning of the game. Like I was actually quite confident going into that break, although it had been a messy first half. That felt like a big moment, a big momentum swing for them and something to build that confidence coming in the second half. But it really, the Sever-Reece yellow card and then the penalty in the last 10 minutes that enabled them to obviously extend out to that 9 points, you know, probably decided the game in the end. It just didn't allow them to come back. And then, you know, we had some issues with the line out down the stretch as well, just in terms of that pressure mounting. And, you know, there's some good opportunities to learn some lessons from that.
Brenna, how does discipline fall apart across a team like that?
I guess it just comes down to the execution of the play at the time, because I can definitely tell you that they would have been talking about discipline, and so it kind of just comes down to that person. And in that time, you look at Sever-Reece's one, you look at Tupo Vai, you even look at Will Jordan's one. You know, it's kind of just on the individual really to be able to try and get it right, because yeah, I think Jip, you'll know this as well. Like, there's no way through that 80 minutes that they weren't talking around that they were having discipline issues and they didn't have the capability to be able to not give away penalties. So to answer your question, Ross, you've just got to be able to try execute and try and not give away penalties. But I think sometimes when you're in a cauldron, kind of where they were in Argentina, you know, if you feel pressure, and I guess the pressure that they felt, they weren't able to deal with it, and that probably resulted in the 3 yellow cards and coming at pretty crucial times in the game as well.
I think you have to put some context around it though. Like 10 penalties isn't a lot. You know, like if you get, you know, single-digit penalties or 10, most coaches will live with that. But I think the point I was trying to make is 3 of those decisions were just such big penalties that, you know, it flowed onto defence. So they tackled at 82%. A lot of that was off the back of being down numbers. And you know, I think the attacking stats of RG's is quite skewed due to those yellow cards. Like if you looked at it as an attacking performance, you'd probably look at it and go, oh man, RG had a good game. But a lot of the stats have been sort of shaped with that, especially that, I suppose, that time in the first half where they were down to 13. And it's very rare that you see an All Black side, you know, have 41% possession. They had actually less than half run metres than Argentina. That's just not a common stat. Normally New Zealand sides will have the most run metres easily. So I think not only did those 3 yellow cards flow onto defence and sort of damage the statistic picture there, it flowed onto the attacking game and just didn't allow them to build pressure through their own attack and put that pressure back onto Argentina. The positive, you know, if even though I've been advised this week, good luck finding a positive through my kind social media friends, but there are some positives for them. Like, again, you look at one of the focuses at the start of the year, conversion rate in the 22, like 60%, 3 tries out of the 5 visits is pretty good. And then the other thing that I really liked is, had we got our kicks, we still put ourselves in a position to have the most points scored. So yes, we missed them, yes, we lost, but we still put ourselves in a position to still win that game when we're in such a deficit in terms of that discipline. So I think, you know, the cornerstone, the yellow cards dictated so much of that performance. It's just not funny.
The question then is, if that's what it comes down to, if there's a bit of desperation and a ball's got to get slapped down, does that come down to a lack of trust in the system around you in stopping what's about to happen with the opposition on attack? Is that what that comes down to, or is it just a brain explosion knowing you got no one on your outside?
Yeah, look, I think there's an element of, you know, once you've committed like that, it's almost like a spot tackle or you're going for an intercept. You have to get it. Yeah. And you almost know that as a player, and your instinct is to grab it at all costs because you've decided, I'm going for this, I'm putting myself high. And you see it a lot in defensive systems, like it's not just the All Blacks. But I suppose, can you afford to, we can't afford to do that against Springboks. Like, even they still managed to beat Australia, which you would look at the game statistically, and Australia should have won that game. You know, like they had 81% defensive tackle rate against the Wallabies, and the Wallabies had much more 22 entries. They just couldn't convert. Opportunities like that just can't be given. But I think where it starts, and I know this seems so simple, but it's in the tackle. So it's in that collision area, and we've gone at length to go about, you know, the dominant carry stat, the gain line carry stat, the lightning quick ball stat. I don't think Will's in that position. I don't think Sevu's in that position. If we're dominating the collision and we're having the ability to slow the ball down, we just, because of probably, you know, numbers coming and going, we just didn't have the impact that we'd seen. And this is what, like, I want to stay, like, I always like to say, like, I don't chop and change my opinion. And this one result still doesn't, you know, change my opinion that the All Blacks are trending upwards. Like, they are in terms of the metrics that matter in and around the collision. If they can control that collision, both sides of the ball, on attack and defence against Springboks, I think that's what will dictate the winner of this series.
Before they went multiple men down, did you see them dominating that collision? Were they in that position?
Well, they scored 2 tries. Yeah. Like, they were dominating. Like, the game was turned on its head with those 2 yellow cards. Yeah, massively. And you know, guys in you know, still new in their Test career, put in a, you know, very high pressure situation, crowd on top of you. I'm not making excuses, but that for me just dictated the game. It dictated the result, and as I said before, we still could have won if we'd got our kicks. We would have had more points. Yeah. So, to answer your question, all that stuff I don't think happens because you're not put in that position if you control the collision area, which they have done, except for on the weekend, which led to the errors.
When we've always talked about, whenever playing the South Africans, the collision area is just a big part of being able to try and win Test matches, because I think if we do get that right and we have the percentage numbers that we had in the French series and probably that first Test match against the Argentinians, there is multiple opportunities to get around the South African team. Like, if you look at their, you know, if you look at probably on the weekend, like, even with pretty much, you know, 3 big players went off with Wright, Swalei, and there was one more off the top of my head. That went off during an early part of the game, that the Australians were still able to attack very, very well with guys that aren't in a position. Like Taine Eden was playing 12, but they were still able to be able to get around and been able to pose questions to the South African team. So I actually think that the All Blacks, if they get their physicality right in terms of game line and winning more collisions than the South Africans, I actually think we can light them up in terms of being able to break them, because there is so much disconnection around their high line speed. They don't operate at that kind of 90%, 89% South Africans usually. So if they want to operate at that 81, 82%, which we've probably seen in that Australian series, and we can execute under pressure with our skill set, whether it be through run, pass and kick, I honestly think we can put a lot of points on the South African team. Now, the question is are we able to do that under high pressure? Is there a bit of dew? Is it going to be wet in terms of being able to Eden Park? And now if it is like that, then we're going to have to go to more of a contested game with what we saw the changes from the South Africans in the second test match against the Australians. So I think it's just all dependent on the collision area, because if you look at the last 4 games, if you look at the percentage of the 4 games, the South Africans have been at 69% lightning quick gain line collision, and then New Zealand has been at 53%. Now I know that those areas will probably weak in the last 4 games, but we've been a lot better in this June series against the French and the last 2 test matches. Just take away the yellow card, which is going to be hard with 13 men for a lot of the game, but we have won the collision areas in most of these games, 4 out of the 5 games that we have had. So it's hard for me to, probably the South African fans will be thinking like, how can you think that? But I just think if we get our collision area right, our skill set's really good, depending on what the weather's going to be, I honestly think we've got a really good opportunity to score a lot of points against the South African defensive team.
I think it's really critical as well. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, the plan's been put in place. The plan, to me, is working. Like, the metrics are saying it's working. So it's almost like take a deep breath. Circumstances led to that outcome that sort of, made it impossible in the end to win that game. And if you look at every time that we've lost to Argentina, and it's the same against the Springboks, they'll kick their threes. And we again gave away, out of those 10 penalties, if they weren't yellow cards, they were penalties, kickable penalties. So where you give away penalties is critical, because the Springboks, you'd have to think Pollard will, well, actually, who knows, but if Pollard starts, he's 6 from 6, that dictated who won that game against Australia. Australia had more opportunity to win that game, they didn't take it. Pollard put in a position, bang, nailed it. Same thing for Argentina every time. They've beaten the All Blacks, they've kicked those penalties around that halfway zone. So it's not just the big penalties, but it's also those penalties that are kickable, but also then putting, as we know, the best mauled defence is not giving a penalty that allows them to kick into the 22. So this discipline issue does need to be solved. And I think, not to labour a point, as Brendan and I have, but in and around that collision defensively will be massive. And getting, I suppose, the selection around hunters, actually getting turnovers, actually getting into that breakdown and getting the tackle type right, the chop tackle, get to deck and get, our best fetches in and around, whether it is a Finlay Christie, like if that opportunity presents, you can utilise him as a weapon. A Tava Nawai, does he come into the reckoning? Like, he is one of the best exponents of the breakdown. So that selection makeup will be interesting.
I just want to bring back to the last 4 games that we have had against South Africans. You're looking at the turnovers, 24 for South Africa and 16 for New Zealand, which is such a big part of being able to get the ball back. There's so many good features in terms with that South African team. You've got Paha Smith, Malcolm Marx is another one that was able to get really good turnover ball. So, I think having that brute force, which we've probably seen in the selection of this 4-pack with the All Blacks, but I think still having a feature that's able to get the ball back. Because I think if the stats were right, we had 3 turnovers on the weekend. But I think it was pretty low the previous week as well. So, you can defend it at an 80, 90% rate, but, it makes it a lot easier if you're able to have a high turnover rate. I could have got that stat wrong, but I think you are right in terms of what that, having the turnover and being able to get pressure put back onto the South Africans, if we can do that a little bit better.
It was an area that probably the Wallabies didn't get full payout of from the first test. McWright was all over it. It was the deciding factor of that game in terms of denying the Springboks the ability to take advantage of the 22-metre entries. McWright, I think the Wallabies only had 1 breakdown turnover on the weekend, and they only just lost, but it was a big reason as to why they couldn't clinically, I suppose, take it to that next step and go back-to-back.
And therefore you go for Artie and du Plessis if you're really wanting breakdown pay?
Well, yeah, I think if you look at the body of work of this season, du Plessis is one of the best at the breakdown.
Yeah.
Like, out and out, he just gets a lot of turnovers. But I also think Finlay comes into it. He's a good exponent, and I think those other players also. Tava Navo had the most turnovers in the comp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can't move him.
Also, one big area that we have to work on is the aerial game. Yeah, you look at probably the South Africans and the way they're kind of hunting collectively together. Like, I just feel that when you're going up for the ball, you just got to have people that in and around the ball, whether that's, someone that's in front, on the side, or at the back, at some time when you are going through kicks, because sometimes the hard scraps or the kind of the ricochet off the ball hasn't been going our way through the June series and probably that game on the weekend. So, look, if you look at the South Africans, and we'll touch on that coming forward, that if they do not get that aerial game right and getting the people in the right positions, and I think winning that, it's going to be a hard day, because of Grant Williams on the weekend. I think he's probably one of the best box kicking nines in the world. The consistency that he's able to give Colby, Moody, whoever's on that right-hand wing, Van der Merwe, whoever's on that wing, they have a genuine chance to get a 50-50 in the air. And so, their numbers, they had 35 kicks on the weekend. We touched on it last week about would they go back to more of a conservative style. Now, I think the field dictated that. But look, I think the way that they did play and the success they did have, and the way that the All Blacks are struggling aerially, I think it's one area that the All Blacks are going to have to really, really nail down and try to get better than they were on the weekend.
Can we use it more like I understand the aerial struggles when the opposition's kicking to us, because if you actually look at it, Australia got a lot of pay out of the contestable kicks and put the back three of South Africa under pressure throughout the game. So my question to you, Bryn, is can we use the box kick or contestable kick more to put that pressure back on opposition? Because it feels like when we do contestable kicks, we're not necessarily getting in the air to compete, or we're not doing it as much. We look to go through the hands probably a little bit more than these other sides.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the kick as well, Jip. And I think if you look at probably the selection of a Kyle Preston, who probably, not too sure with how Cortez Ratima is looking. It looks like he had a bit of an injury on the weekend. Like, we just haven't been able to get up in the air. Like you said, the contestable it's named contestable for a reason. Because if you look at the South Africans, if you even look at the Wallabies on the weekend, Jorgensen and the likes have been able to get up for the ball. So, look, I think if we do go back to it, and I think we probably will, considering that coming to Eden Park, it could be a bit dewy, a little bit wet. So the contestable game is going to be really good. So I think maybe next question that we do ask Ross is who do we think is going to be the 9 if there are injuries? I thought Finlay Christie actually came on and played really well in terms of what his competitiveness and what he can do, and showed a good array of kicks at time. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that I think we're going to have to go to, because the conditions I think that we're going to face back home in New Zealand and what we did see in Argentina, there was a trend for us to be able to run the ball a lot more. And I think, we were down to yellow cards, and the attacking side, we weren't able to get what we wanted because we didn't have 15 men on the field for the majority of that game with the 3 yellow cards. But yeah, I think if we are going to go to that contestable game, whether it's off 9, whether it's off 10, we've seen in the past Bowden Barrett and Damien McKenzie kicking those contestables across field like what Pollard does. So yeah, I think it's one area that we will have to do, especially with the line speed that's coming from the Springboks and how high of a line speed they have.
When it comes to adapting to chasing these high balls, have we just not got out of the escort era well? Is that the problem here? We were so used to it that it became a completely different scenario, and we haven't adapted the way that other teams have adapted out of that escort era.
No, well, that's what I think I was trying to say is, I think everyone's struggling in the aerial game in terms of when they're receiving it.
Yeah.
But what we haven't seemed to use it as much in a contestable sense. We're still using the theoretical contestable kick, but as Bryn said, we're not getting in the contest. And it's sort of just giving teams easy outs. Whereas if you look at both the Wallabies, the Springboks and ourselves, most teams would probably have a 50% strike rate in terms of receiving those contestable kicks. And they're getting shorter and shorter to the point that, if you looked at the South African Wallaby game, a lot of them bounced. They just let them go and it was almost luck of the draw. So I think it's a challenging area since the escort rules changed. I think it's almost majority of the advantages in the chasing team or the kicking team because they've got the momentum running onto the ball. I mean, I don't know. I've never jumped for one, but I'm assuming because you're running forward and you can sort of jump into that momentum, they're sort of got the ability to time it a little bit better than when you're just waiting there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you're just waiting there and then you don't have that momentum to jump, so they're always getting out-leaped. So I don't know what the solution is, maybe starting a bit deeper and being able to run into it, but I mean, that could end in tears as well in terms of mid-air collisions, and that's what I'm thinking. Can we use it more? You know, you're not going to be able to nail it when you're receiving it like that. I think it's kind of impossible, especially with Grant Williams and you know, even Nick White to that point in terms of their box kicking game. But yeah, I just think maybe it's something we need to look at utilising, because we've still got the athletes that can get in the air. We just, you know, I just haven't seen us use it as much. Like, what was it, 35 from South Africa and 28? And like the kick meters are 586 and 700, you know, like it's not a lot, it's not big distance. So the majority of those are just in the sky.
Throwing it up.
And when you look at the comparison of our kick stats, they don't mimic that same picture.
We showed that probably in the first test match against the French, like Cam Roygaard. Look at the difference of like Cam Roygaard and his boot. You know, he can put snow on it in terms of the distance, you know, a 20, 25, 28 metre kick, but how high he gets the ball, it actually gave the guys good opportunities to be able to do it. Like, and if we don't feel like we want to do it from 9, we can still do it from 10. Like you see Pollard and his ability to be able to kick it from 10, that open side contestable is a really good way to be able to try and be able to get the ball back. So whether they marry up both the box kick or off 10 and being able to get it in the wider channels, yeah, I just think I think with what's coming in terms of how the South Africans defend, we've got to be able to have a contested back, and also the attacking kicking games, which we saw probably in the last test match with Bowden Barrett putting them in behind as well.
Brent, just going back to what you're talking about with the Springboks and the box kicking, one of the things that they've really innovated with, and I don't know if it's just this year, but I've noticed this year, the way that they're box kicking short and they're sending Etzebeth and Snyman up to chase. That's different. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a structure that they are using, and it's a really smart way to do it, because like if you get your kick right and you know, those loose forwards or those locks actually don't have to run that fast to be able to get up for the ball, because the kicks are so spot on. So yeah, it's a great way to have it. In the past, probably in teams that I've been, you've had the midfielder has been one, or the loose forward has been able to be on the open side. You have the winger towards the touchline, and you're having two guys that are going for the ball depending on where it does go. So yeah, it's a really good ploy because you've got two guys that are going for the ball. But first and foremost, it just comes with the kick, Ross. Like Grant Williams at the moment, he's just getting really good pay in terms of being able to get his execution of his kick right. So yeah, like I said, the All Blacks are really going to have to be able to get a good plan in place to be able to nullify both of those guys that are going to be going for the ball.
With the 9 though, the top 3 9s in the squad are all injured right now. What are our options from here?
Well, I don't know where the Cam Roygaard one's at.
Yeah.
So I think like that will become clear, and having the week break maybe gives him chance. We obviously haven't heard how bad Cortez is, so there's still a lot up in the air. I mean, Bryn's still pretty fit. He's in training, you know. Saw Nuggy in the All Blacks environment throughout the French series. I am tongue-in-cheek there, but there is the Matt Todd theory, that where Steve sort of ushered him in when there was a number of injuries. Xavier Rowe was big in the Shield Challenge, you know. You got Mitch Drummond, who's previously represented the All Blacks, so there's still some options that are, I suppose, in and around. But it would be big Springboks and 2 debutants, basically. It would be if those other guys are out.
You can't drop the Aaron Smith thing, not further elaborate. So, I mean, considering he is definitely a Japan player and he's not contracted here, I presume there would be some hoops if they so decided that Xavier Rowe, whoever else there wasn't the person to come in, and they wanted to bring Aaron Smith because he'd been in camp and is a legend of the game.
I was joking.
But there would be hoops to jump through, right? You couldn't.
Yeah, well, I can't quite remember the situation of Matt Todd.
Yeah.
But he was playing in Japan, and I think he joined them on the India tour.
Yeah.
When there was they were littered with injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty deep. You know, if you're losing 3 or 4 of your frontline players, it's, you know, you're putting that depth under pressure. And I always just think, you don't want to set guys up to fail. Like, you want to create an environment where they're stepping in and they're able to take the opportunity. In all seriousness, Bryn, that was quite a performance from Finlay.
Mate, I was really impressed with him. Like, you know, the things that we see that I love seeing with Finlay is he's a competitor. Like, any scraps around the ball, his physicality around the breakdown, he got a couple of turnovers, his distribution game, his kicking, he was able to execute some really good kicks, whether it was long or contestable. So, look, I think if Cortez is our team, I feel pretty confident that Finlay Christie, with his performance on the weekend and the experience that he does have, will be very good for the Springboks. I guess it's just more so who they are going to pick for that second game. Because, look, if you do look at, you know, Hotham, Ratsima and Roygaard, if they are out, then a Kyle Preston is coming in to be able to come off the bench for Finlay Christie. So Like to think that hopefully Cortez' injury isn't too serious, but I kind of did see it throughout the duration of the match. It was kind of going to his chest or his sternum, so hopefully it's a sternum jip. If it's your pec area, that's probably a little bit longer out. So yeah, I guess that medical staff for the All Blacks are going to be doing a lot of work in and around the nines at the moment, and hopefully one of those three that were selected originally can be back for that South Africa Test match with Finlay Christie.
Brenton, sorry to keep bombarding you with kick questions, but the manipulation, like I know the quick tap from Nick White for the first Wallabies try, but then O'Connor's, it seems like because of that rush D and the South African wingers are in that defensive line, there is so much opportunity for the All Blacks to look at that backfield and be able to manipulate it. You know, they were fortunate with Jorgensen's try and the bounce of the ball, but man, they created a lot through the boot, Australia.
I definitely think so. Look, we've touched on a lot, Jip, around the line speed pressure that the Boks have done for a long time. So the attacking kicks and seeing that space, and even the attacking kick out wide to be able to get it to the winger on the edge is going to be really important. But I think what I did enjoy in the last Test match, Jip, in which we saw with Beauden Barrett, they were able to try to find that space. And so I guess they have previewed that with the Argentinians, and there'll be something they'll be previewing with the South Africans, because I think there is going to be space there. Now, the important thing in and around that is collectively is in the outsides, whether you're a centre, a winger, a loose forward, or if you're a hooker on the edge, whoever it may be, you've got to be able to try and give that information into the drivers. So whether that's a 10, Beauden Barrett, or Geordie Barrett, who's that second pivot and seeing that space, I think there's just a lot of ways to be able to try to nail that kick. So I think if there is a space there, you've got to be able to communicate that in. So hopefully through the preparation through the week, the analysis, they'll see that Colby might be coming high. There might be the fullback that's not there for two phases in the first, maybe first 2 or 3 phases in the attack when they are attacking, and they've been able to try and do it from there. But I guess I have seen a lot in probably the last 12 months that we have tried to use our kicking and attacking kicks, whether it's through the middle of the field, cross-field kicks, or even some examples that Beauden Barrett was coming back on a cut ball and then trying to be able to do a very similar kick to what James O'Connor did. So yeah, I think it's going to have to be one area they're going to have to be able to do, Jip, because if they can't get the ball to the space with just being able to go through the hands and the skill set, then you've got to be able to try to find other ways through the boot of multiple players in that back line.
We've had a lot of emails come through this week, and one of them was from a regular who goes by the name of Macho Man. I think there's an issue with how the AB centres play. The talent is there, but the structure and the depth is not. You look this season so far, when the centres combined, they've had a good game together, but I can't name one. That to me screams centre structure/system more so than talent, especially when you look at Geordie Barrett, Tavatava Nawai, Proctor, Tupai, Ioane, ALB. That's a lot of awesomeness there that's not quite working. Brenna, when you look at the structures and you look at the modern game, how hard is it to set alight your midfield partnership given the way that opposition come in at you and what you have to do in order to beat these defences?
The centre line, in terms of what the All Blacks are running, is quite a sacrificial line. Like if you look at the down ball, more so the trend is one where it's off a line-out or a scrum, that 12 Geordie's getting that ball nice and flat, and a Billy Proctor, even Rico Ioane, when he was at centre previously, runs that sacrificial line to be able to go at the back, and we've scored multiple tries from that structure phase. So, do people want to see the ball with ball in hand and having the centre one-on-one? Like, yes, that's what we talked about with Rico in terms of when he was at centre. How could we be able to use his skill set and his speed to be able to get him more one-on-one and more in space? But I think with what I am seeing at the moment with the centres, it's been able to run very good lines, and Geordie Barrett being that ball distributor and how he's able to use his skill set to be able to get the ball to space. And, could they do that maybe a little bit wider when Billy Proctor or if Rico's there, or whoever Puntapai was there on the weekend, if they are out on the edge? Look, if they get good go-forward ball, then there's an opportunity to be able to get more of a one-on-one. But I don't know, Drip, for what I am seeing, it's more of that sacrificial line, and I guess what they are doing now in scene work is them kind of setting up to be able to score the tries. Like if you look in the French series, how many times we talked around them working collectively together. You look at how many times the centres have to run that line to be able to fix them in. Damien McKenzie or Beauden Barrett, or where Will Jordan gets the ball away to the edge, it's because of what that line and I guess what the centres are asked to do for the All Blacks in this attack structure at the moment. Probably
the most impressive centre I've seen this season is Hugh Jones for the British and Irish Lions. Why? Because he wasn't up against rush D. The Wallabies don't do rush D. So I wouldn't say that you would, we get fixated on the All Blacks, rightly so, they're our team, okay, and that's fixated on that 13 spot. But I wouldn't say Suolii's been set alight. I wouldn't say Jesse Creel's been set alight. These are world-class players. They're not... It's just the nature of defensive structures. James O'Connor gave the blueprint of who's probably the most important. in the whole attacking structure, is 10's ability to have the courage to let it go.
Yeah, so the bridge pass has replaced centres making breaks and distributing to wings.
Well, centres have become such a key cog in setting the outsides alight. Rush D is now going, I want to shut those two down.
Yep.
So it's changing the game. They are now having to be sacrificial lambs. If that pressure doesn't come, the 10's got to have the ability to know that, and they can give and use. Just like we saw Suali'i off the kickoff, and he gave that little out step, boom, try, Tom Wright. Okay, so you give them time and space. You give Billy Proctor time and space, he'll do his thing. But it just doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. The Springboks aren't going to let it happen. New Zealand isn't going to let Jesse Creel happen. Do you know what I mean? So the 10 in attacking structures and the width and the communication of 15 and your wingers will probably dictate how the attack goes.
Right, so people can almost forget about the idea for the majority of a game, Bryn, that a midfielder is going to take an outside break and put their winger away. It's just not how it works unless the game's busted open.
Not necessarily. Like, I think if you look at Suali'i in their, maybe the third or test match against British Irish Lions when he steps that one-on-one, but if like Jip was saying, if that ball is quick and you give them the ball within the space with a quick shift, then, you know, it's a one-on-one with a prop, or it's a lock, or it's someone that you're able to be with a mismatch with his speed or footwork. But I just think with how the game is at the moment, the line and being able to be that sacrificial land like Graham talked about, and the depth of that 10 to get that ball out the back, to get that last defender, whether it be a Colby or it might be a Jesse Creel, both of them flying, is to then get that ball to a Will Jordan in that space to get around the attack. So if those centres don't run that line, and look, if you look at all world rugby at the moment, not just at international level, they're running the exact same lines. The centres are running the exact same lines. Like we saw Tuipulotu and I guess even Bundyaki hitting that short ball to Jones. Like if they don't want to be honest and they want to fly out the back to a 10 or winger, they're behind that and they think that it's going to go out the back, then the short ball's on. Like we've seen that a lot of times with that structure that I'm talking about. So I think to finish on that point, if there is good go forward ball and it's a quick shift and they have that kind of footwork like a Suali'i showed in that British and Irish Lions test, then great, you have the opportunity to do that. But with the line speed pressure, it's been able to, having your 12 being that distributor and your 10 being able to get that ball away, whether it be run, pass or kick from that depth from the number 12.
Yeah, and most of the time those opportunities come offline breaks. Okay, so if we use the Suali'i one, because it's the best example, he's the best athlete. Jorgensen makes a break off the kickoff. British and Irish Lions are retreating, no time to set, no time to bring the line speed. More importantly, the ball goes directly to 10. So often now it goes through a forward pod through there. That's all time. So the more it goes to the forward pod, out the back to the 10, you've just given me that pass, more time to get up in the face of the centres. So it's, again, comes back to the 10 going hot, I want it now, or it's going to go through this pod. So then this is the only option you have as the midfield. Unless you want to be 30 metres deep, but that's risky as well because you can draw that defence out, but you've got to get it to the edge. Because if you get shut down that far behind the advantage line, that's probably worse, if anything. So it's making the right decision off the basis of what happens in the collision area, not to come back to what we discussed before, but if you win that collision, you get quick ball, that will dictate the time and space of your attack.
If you, a family member or friend, wants to get into rugby shape, we have the giveaway to suit. Along with All Blacks trainer Dr. Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team, we're trying to get the rugby community, whether you're a player or fan, fit and strong. Each week, one winner will receive 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Perform membership, with full access to all of Dr. Nick Gill's pre-season, in-season, off-season, and specialty programs to help take your game to the next level. A huge congratulations to this week's winner, Andrew Wiley. You've scored 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Perform membership. Andrew's a 42-year-old social player in London. His team has won 2 leagues on the trot and have been promoted. His last season was tough with injuries and a drop-off in cardio through the season. He wants to be competitive and push for a higher team next season, so he's keen to build the cardio, drop weight and improve mobility. Thanks again to everyone who entered. We loved reading your stories, and if you didn't win this time around, don't worry, you're still in the running, so keep those amazing submissions coming, and it could be your name we announce next week. Want in? It's simple. Just DM Rugby Ready on Instagram with the code ARP and tell them why you'd love to win. And of course, if you miss out, you can get 75% off memberships through ARP by going to the link or using the QR code below. Now, we've had a really interesting first weekend of the Rugby World Cup up in England. The Black Ferns took in probably not their top team, and they managed to pick up a 54-8 victory over Spain. Jip, it felt like it could have been a lot more than that, though.
Yeah, look, it just felt like the first game, really.
Yeah.
You know, like there was just a little bit of clunkiness around it, but there was still moments and performance of brilliance. And sometimes in these games, when you're expected to score a lot of points, because you feel that you can push passes or overplay your hand a little bit, but, you know, again, like obviously Georgia Miller, extremely strong in those wide channels, and you know she's going to have a say in dictating how deep, I suppose, the Black Ferns go in this competition. Like that was, you know, whether it's Spain or England, I think she can still do the same sort of inability to score the unscorable.
Yeah.
You know, that first try.
The changes of
There was like change of directions, fens, balls changing hands, and just glides through 5 or 6 defenders. It was like there was probably 5 people able to tackle her, but didn't really get near her.
Yeah, and sensational really, Brenna. 11 defenders beaten, 2 tries. There were some other outstanding performances there. I think if you look at the loose forwards, the way that Sae and also Michaeli too were able to get over the advantage line, that's the blueprint, isn't it?
It was incredible. Like if you look at the Leila Sae's stats, 203 metres, 17 carries and 11 tackles and 2 turnovers. Like she was absolutely immense. Like, and I know it's against Spain, but that collectively, that loose forward trio were like unbelievably outstanding. And I actually thought Jip as well. The bench I thought really came on and played really, really well with the likes of Kalona Vali, Olsen Baker. Hopefully she's not injured. She looked like she got a serious injury, which will be a big blow for the Black Ferns. Valiko and Bayfield as well. I think they really came on in that second half, especially in the first 20 minutes of that second half, bringing the impact and being able to, I guess, out-muscle that Spanish side. So look, I think you look at the attacking stats, it was massive against of what they were. Like, you know, they had like 1,771 metres, 71% gain line. But look, I think it was against a Spanish team, so I think they'll be better for that first game, being able to get the cobwebs out. It's the first game of the year in terms of that competition. So I think they will get better, but I think the turnovers, again, is probably something that we have touched on a lot with this Black Ferns team. They had 19 turnovers on the weekend, and especially probably looking at that first 10 minutes, there were quite a lot. And you put that down to nerves and I guess the clunkiness of being the first game of the season. But look, if you look at it on the attacking side and the bench that came on and the loose forward trio that you touched on, Ross, there were some really good positives for that Black Ferns team.
Yeah, I think a lot of the turnovers came off the back of how quick the ball was. And I think if they're going to dominate that much in the collision, which I don't see that changing, whether it's Spain or England or France, it's how they can play the next few phases up tempo, because, you know, 75, 76% lightning quick ball, being able to keep that speed and ball up mentality and be able to go through the hands and keep it simple could be more beneficial. Like I felt at times we slowed our own ball down, like we'd done the dent, but then didn't play flat and fast. Almost brought the ball back and we went through a move or a prescribed setup. And I think if they can react off the back of those loose forward trio doing the business physically and really be able to inject themselves in the game, I think Woodman Whitcliffe, you know, thinking Setafano, Fuller, and I know I'm naming the Sevens players, but it's their instinct. And to be able to sort of just, you know, Maya Joseph wasn't there, but I think she'll be able to get that ball up and play. And if they can play on top of teams like that after denting them, I think you'll see a much more clinical performance and a lot less errors.
61 defenders beaten, though. 61 defenders beaten. I mean, for a team to win by 54-8 and concede 22 turnovers or 19 turnovers, whatever which one it was, that, I mean, it's almost obscene. Teams that lose by a long way when they concede that many.
But I think when you've got so much ball, all these stats, you've got to take, it tells part of the picture, but not the whole picture. So I think all of those are relative to the amount of ball they had. But I felt like a lot of the errors came off the back of not being able to deal with that tempo. Yeah.
Now, Georgia Miller was one highlight. The other highlight player from the weekend, Bryn, is one of your favourites, Ellie Kildunn. Just sensational against the USA.
She's like one of my favourite players to watch with how she plays. So, like, I think it's going to be interesting, I guess, for them to be able to continue the way that they are going, how they have started. Look, I think, you can't underestimate, I guess, what the draw is, and I guess being able to build confidence for all teams, I guess, but also for England as well, with being able to, I guess, build that cohesion and being able to play some football for when the back end of the competition does come. Are they able to execute under those kind of pressures? So, like, I think for both England, New Zealand, even France, and the teams that are probably going to be thereabouts in the semi-final, just being able to go through their business, have some trends that they want to be able to get right throughout the competition, and when it does come to that back end, hopefully they've had enough time together. I think England are actually just pretty good in general, so I think they'll be okay, but I'm thinking more so for the New Zealand side. Coming that back end of the tournament, hopefully they're having all fire selling and being able to play at a better brand of footy than they probably did on the weekend.
The thing I love about Kildunn is there's all her metrics and her highlights, but how often she touches the ball 2 or 3 times in a play. Like her ability to stay engaged or connected, her ability to read defence, to free up the outside, unselfishly, but then to push through the defence, to get a second touch, to then link. I just think, man, she's just never off. For young players out there in that role of knowing when to do something, and she just does that so well. When she knows it's on for her, makes a good decision, but then when it's not, or if there's an opportunity she sees, it's just her ability to sort of free up others and make others look good is probably what I think is most impressive about her. Like, obviously all her highlight stuff's great, but man, she does a lot of things that probably don't make the highlight reel that are just as impactful.
She has a lot of time.
Yeah, the best players do.
The best players have time. She's got a lot of time.
And I think that's that depth perception, knowing how to draw defenders out, that, there's a ultimate skill set, and if you look at the history of our game, the best players, it's a silly thing to say, it does look like they have time, but they create time through their foot speed, where they sort of line up, where they inject themselves, and, it's second nature to her.
The other place where I thought England stood out in comparison to watching all of the other teams, Brenna, was their willingness to play without the ball.
Like, I think at the same time, they attack, really got 11 tries from 16 entries, but their ability to be able to kick from multiple players is a big thing. We touched on it a lot with the Black Ferns and being able to use a kicking game to play without the ball to build pressure. But look, they've got, a lot of players, Harrison, Megan Jones and Kildunn as well. They can all kick, you know what I mean? So I think when you've got that efficiency, being able to be inside the 22, they play very, very good in terms of set piece wise, the brute force, but their kicking game, I think, has been a big difference of why they've been so successful over the years, and probably post their World Cup, because it's a big part of that Six Nations brand of being able to play without the ball. So yeah, it's a positive that they do, and when hopefully if the Black Ferns do get through, it's something they'll have to deal with. But yeah, it's definitely a trait that has probably set England apart, and probably one of the biggest differences why they do so well.
They don't kick off 9 though, which is interesting. They tend to kick off 10, 13, 15. So it hasn't, the box kick element, that contestable thing's not really there. They'd rather go long.
Yeah, I think that's the nature of the beast, is that defensive pressure is, in the female game, is definitely about boxing sides in, because if you think about it tactically, every team is possession-based pretty much, except for England, maybe France. And because of that, if you kick it long into their 22, you're almost saying, hey, we back our D, are you going to make a mistake in your territory? Because we know you can't get out with a boot. And that's how they suffocate teams.
Yeah. Oh, it's been great to watch them in this first round, and we'll see how it all comes up in the rounds to come. The NPC was also full of drama on the weekend. Jipper, the Ramfleet Shield. I know you love the Ramfleet Shield, but goodness me, the way that it came to that climax at the end with the ball falling off, and it was...
I think it was before that. There was so many penalties that Waikato gave away, Taranaki were in complete control. And then, Josh Jacob was having a all-star game, 10 out of 10 game, and the one error he made was off one of the final penalties. They kicked to the corner and it went dead. And from that, Waikato almost got their way up the field off the back of that, and then the drama of the ball falling over. I mean, you wouldn't want anyone else doing it because it didn't fluster Lima at all. Like, he was so relaxed. And just, like, it still wasn't an easy kick. And he just, boom, over with ease. But look, I think that Shield game, I thought the Stags was, they were outstanding to see them. Northland, 17 years since they've won at Eden Park. That was a massive effort there. So there were upsets galore across the game. I don't know the history, but I can't remember the last time Manawatu beat Wellington. That convincingly. So the NPC is just the gift that keeps on giving. Unless
you're from Auckland. The Super City's got no wins across Harbour, Auckland and counties so far. I was having this chat with Goldie in the dressing room yesterday, Brynner, about Auckland and how they're still winless. And he made a really interesting point about the Auckland lack of experience in key positions. And I hadn't really considered the fact, obviously, Plummer and Sullivan have gone. But when you look around those teams that are really succeeding, it comes down to playmakers with experience. And some of these other teams, especially the Auckland teams, don't seem to have that in abundance.
With teams that are playing well, they've got a multiple number of experienced players. So you just can't buy. You look at Canterbury, I think, Louis Chapman probably got moving from Tasman. He's been in and around that environment for a very long time. You've got White, who's very young, but you've got Johnny McNichol, who's at that fullback stage, who brings a wealth of experience. And
I think as well, Brent,
look at Taranaki.
Andrew Newstub. Like, don't underestimate his experience in sevens. The experience, his calm, composed play on the weekend. He's been exceptional for Canterbury and almost a shining light in terms of what a recruitment by Canterbury to get him out of the sevens program, and he's looked at home at 10.
100%, and then you also look probably at Waikato. If you're looking at those Lima Sipawanga examples, they're at the back end of the game, but you've got a Xavier Rowe, who's probably the most experienced 9 in and around probably next cab off the ring in the All Blacks. You'd have to think with how he's playing. So yeah, like having that spine, and I guess in the 9 and 10 is pretty crucial. You're probably seeing that in the early part of this composition with teams being able to succeed. Look at Bay of Plenty with Judd and even Cashmore, with Caleb Trask plays 10 as well. So I just think you look at your counties, your Auckland and North Harbour, that 9-10 period is probably just a little bit lacking in terms of game knowledge and being able to have that experience, which I think, in NPC is just so valuable, and not in just 9 and 10, but in a lot of positions, being able to have that experience. You just can't buy it. And hopefully at the back end of the season, that's where you pay for that, being able to have that experience.
In a very rare moment, I'll come to the defence of Auckland. I think if you look at the team that played Waikato and Canterbury, they have been decimated with injury. Like some of their key players, and no more so than Anton Segner. Like, he was the heart and soul of nearly beating Waikato, who are now Shield holders, and Canterbury in Canterbury. And that experience head of an Anton Segner and he's the captain, is a big gap. But there's also, I think they're up to, 15, 16, maybe more injuries of players that would potentially push for spots in the 23.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you're an inexperienced player, sometimes the only way you can get that experience is through a bit of disappointment, speaking from experience. But it's brutal, but they'll be better for it. And looking at their draw, they've still got the ability, once getting some fresh bodies back, to make a charge. But Harbour and Counties, they probably don't have as many injuries. So a lot of theirs is probably just 1 or 2 big stars. Like Mark Talia is a key cog. Like, he was massive for them in that performance against Taranaki. So the more time they can get their big names out there, I think the more confidence those squads will grow.
In Auckland's defence, Bryn, they've also had a hell of a start to the season. They've played some of the very, very best teams. So a win will surely come at some point. Yeah,
well, it doesn't get any easier when they do play Wellington, and especially with them losing to Manawatu, you'd have to think they'll be rearing to go. But I completely agree with Jip. Sometimes they've been decimated through injuries. Like, man, sometimes I see on Instagram the outs that go out every single week. So unfortunately, a lot of young men get given opportunities, and sometimes it's just a baptism of fire. Sometimes the youth and inexperience and not knowing what's happening on a week-to-week basis can work for you. But as we're seeing with Auckland, they're probably just on the opposite side of the win column. 26-0, in their first half against Auckland. So it doesn't matter how experienced you are, being down like that, it's difficult to be able to try and get a win. So yeah, very similar to Harbour, and I guess the teams that are at that lower end. It's just been able to build some confidence. And all it really does take in this NPC is one win, and you gain confidence, and then you can kind of get on a little bit of a trot. But I guess for those teams that are at the bottom that haven't won, they hope to think that can happen pretty quickly in the next couple of weeks.
Saying that, Mika Muliaina for Southland, he's going really well. Man, he's just mature beyond his years. I'm really excited for the Shield Challenge this Sunday.
You reckon Southland could take it home?
I definitely think they could win.
Yeah.
I think Waikato will go in as favourites. But from what I saw, like Sean Withy's performance, Tupou Ta'iloa, mate, he had like 24 carries, 20 tackles. It was just like outrageous numbers, and was really key in a number of their tries through selfless acts, not being the guy. So his maturity and development, I think those two, if they can play like they did against Bay of Plenty, they're a real shot.
It's amazing how things change in a year. He was a long shot at a Super Rugby.
Almost a bench player for Southland as well.
Yeah, and now he comes back with all of that confidence and knowledge from Moana Pacifica.
But also fit, man. The numbers, his numbers are just crazy. And he's going like full tilt to the end. He doesn't button off.
And he's a big body. Yeah, he's a lot to carry.
100%. Like, he is just a man possessed at the moment. And some of the plays for Sean Withy the other night when the game was on the line, it was so good.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Just so bold. Especially the turnover. Like, it could have so gone wrong. but he just, confidence in his ability, saw the pitch and did it. But it was, massive.
Fizz levels in the commentary box.
Oh, mate, I was through the roof. I was through the roof. It was a great game.
We probably need a fizzometer and see whether he got
if you put Jeff McTainsh and I together, it's always going to be a high level of fizzing. And then if you can add Joey Wheeler sideline, you've got a hell of a combo.
I love watching Southland. Like, you look at the game previously as well when they beat, was it 1-2 they beat last week? They came back from behind.
Yeah.
Came back from behind, and then the game against Bay of Plenty, which we thought Bay of Plenty would probably win. Look, I think they've got a genuine chance with the way that they are playing. They've got a real, I don't know if you feel similar around this trip, but a real old, like the old Southland teams that were able to grit, find a way, stay in the fight, and just made it not real. Well, they made it ugly back in their day, but they're playing a really good brand of footy. So look, I know that Waikato probably, if you're Southland, you're hoping they're probably still having a few lemonades in this early part of the week. But look, I'm really looking forward to seeing if Southland can get the job done because, they've had some really good back-to-back results and winning some pretty competitive footy as well.
Plenty of rugby, as you can hear, coming up this weekend. Even without the Rugby Championship on a week off, there is so much footy. You're on your way to a divorce if you watch it all. Good luck with that. Thank you very much for watching the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. Thank you to everyone who helps us put the show together. Thank you for all of your contributions. Please send us an email at aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, and we will try our best to get to as many of them as we can. If not next week, the week after, or the week after that. We'll catch you very soon. Mā te wā.